All righty. Good morning. Thanks for everybody for hopping on to this month's Industry 30 with Gray Bar. We are lucky to have Scott Kennedy on the line today, and he's going to give Gray Bar's market and construction forecast. This webinar is being recorded, and we'll place it on the website after we're done. If you do have any questions, you'll have some time at the end to ask, or you can use the chat feature. With that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Scott. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Good morning, everyone. Yeah, some technical challenges and being able to share full screen and still have access to my notes. So made a decision to go ahead, and you're gonna have the opportunity to see my notes. So market and construction forecast for the NECA Penn-Del territory. For those of you that have attended before, we use three services primarily. Two are listed on the screen there. IHS Market for our national forecasting data, Dodge, and DISC for our local forecasting data. So we're going to jump in with some national information, and then we'll move through commodities and where we're seeing things on the commodity front. We'll talk about price and product availability, and then we'll get into forecasts for the next 3 years for the NECA Penn-Del footprint. So let's jump in. Executive summary. U.S. economy is experiencing a slowdown. And I'm sure everybody's heard this due to uncertainty around tariffs. Obviously, a lot of gyrations with regards to that, which I'm sure has made it difficult for most of you. It's certainly been challenging for us as a distributor, along with our manufacturers. Those tariffs, as of a few weeks ago, were projected to increase consumer prices and reduce GDP growth, which in turn creates headwinds. But that landscape is ever changing. And as of a few weeks back, I was somewhat astounded by this stat, that came from our marketing intelligence team that nearly 80% of all U.S. imports would have been subject to tariffs. The trade weighted effective tariff rate would have reached 24% under these policies, roughly tenfold increase from where it was previously at 2.3% last year, and the highest in over 100 years. So it doesn't seem as though we're going to land there at this point, but a few weeks back, that was where we stood. And this is all while inflation continues to decline. We were at 2.8 in February, came in at 2.3 in April. As we continue to chase that Federal Reserve target of 2%. And on the labor front, unemployment remains steady at 4.2%. In April, while jobs increased 177,000, indicating the labor market is holding relatively stable currently. You can see some growth headwinds, some growth tailwinds on the screen in front of you. We did have GDP increase in the fourth quarter of 2024 at 2.4%, which gave a 2.8% overall increase for 2024. But the first quarter GDP did decline 0.3%, which is one of the first indicators of a marked slowdown. And my notes obviously indicate that that's an uptick in exports prior to tariff hikes. And projections are still out there that indicate a 45% probability of the U.S. experiencing an economic recession by December 2025. And obviously those have risen around tariff uncertainty and waning consumer confidence. Inflation, just a further look at inflation over the last year. You can see at 2.3%, it's the lowest it's been in a year. While April's not on the chart, as mentioned previously, it's at 2.3%. So, and we have a 50 basis point decline just from February. So we'll see if that remains as we move through May here. On the workforce front nationally, As mentioned, the unemployment rate remains at 4.2. And while March was solid, there are signs pointing to a slowing labor market. And you can see the job additions, 153,000 in March, 177,000 in April. Those both beat estimates. And we're averaging about 152,000 jobs per month over the last 12 across the U.S. economy. Where we're seeing declines are in the number of job openings, 7.6 million in February, but those have fallen to 7.2 million in the last 2 months, and that is a 12-month low. I did take a look at that. For most of last year, job openings were up over 8 million nationally. So trending in the wrong direction from a job opening standpoint. And I did take a peek at the construction industry. There are 264,000 job openings nationally, which is down from 429,000 at the same point last year. Just quickly on transportation, transportation was a concern, going into the pandemic, available drivers, increasing prices, much of that has seemed to settled out. Saw transportation highs, freight highs, difficulty getting trucks, available trucks to deliver loads over the past couple of years. But as business has declined, I shouldn't say business declined, but pricing has declined. Some of those concerns have faded. And obviously tariffs have the potential to reduce potential freight demand. So we keep an eye on freight overall, because obviously it's an important piece of the logistics that we do as a company. Price and material availability. We're still seeing longer lead times in power distribution equipment, to include fuses, and they're certainly longer than pre-pandemic, but there has been improvement over the past 6 months. Most of we're Square D Premier nationally, and they certainly have improved their lead times across a variety of their product categories, with a couple specific product categories still struggling. And I think we'll continue to see improvements over the course of this year. And, I have a note there that I usually receive questions here. So if there are any, I'll take a moment. Okay, no questions there. So we'll move on to price trends. Usually a lot of interest in what's going on in the copper market. I'm sure many of you track the COMEX, certainly have seen some volatility there. Copper rebounded in early April to 450, down 6% from March, but up 6% from last April, and has been trading between 460 and 470 over the past 3 weeks or so. Checked this morning, it was 468. We are seeing some competition amongst the wire manufacturers over the course of May. So while the COMEX remains at the stable level, they are competing, as I think their demand is a little bit light here in the current time frame, saying the month of May. And copper tariffs, there was conversation around that going back a few weeks. I haven't seen anything in the news with regards to that, but that would certainly drive a greater degree of price volatility. And there's a cross section of folks that follow this market that expect copper to exceed $5 by the end of the year. But I would also say that there are always folks that expect that each and every year. So I guess, as they say, you have to play the game. So we'll see how that plays out. And I mentioned in previous presentation that the Chinese economy is a driver here. So the Chinese economy is running hot. That drives copper levels up historically. Then obviously the opposite, if their economy is soft. So something to pay attention to if you pay attention to copper for your business. On the steel front, we have seen a surge in pricing this year, roughly 30%. Strong domestic demand, some tariff impacts, but May steel has settled some, even retracted just a bit, which isn't a surprise. That 25% tariff that was implemented on all steel products. Some of the import manufacturers have been able to get their products excluded under USMCA, which replaced NAFTA, if you remember NAFTA. And this has contributed to some of the settling, and I think softening demand has also done that. And I put a definition of the USMCA there just in case anyone asks with regards to that. But United States, Mexico, Canada agreement. And it's been a topic of conversation in our business as some of our manufacturers look to get their products listed under that. And it's excluded from tariffs if they're able to do that. Moving on to aluminum. Aluminum certainly has declined over the last year. We did see a small spike about 4 weeks ago when the Canadian tariff was implemented, because all aluminum rod comes from Canada to our manufacturers here. So obviously that impacted aluminum cable pricing, aluminum conduit pricing. That settled back probably about halfway, and we expect that trend to continue. So if you have aluminum on your projects, I think you'll be in a good spot as we move forward here. PVC relatively flat. Prices are down year over year and declining month over month. It says their days of supply increased to 22, but PVC is readily available, and the manufacturers are interested in moving their inventory. So, barring a weather event, we expect that trend to continue. Electrical price index shows a 2.8% increase, 2.4% year over year, and a 0.8% increase in February. This is the latest data we have. Expect some changes on the EPI as we move into the end of the quarter, and should have updated data towards the end of June. Even with the reduction or pause in tariffs, some manufacturers have tariffed inventory that they need to work through. I actually spoke to one earlier this week, and they had a significant amount of inventory that was tariffed that obviously they need to move at that level. So we'll see some softening with those manufacturers as they work through that inventory. And it'll be interesting to see how that plays out in the overall price increase across our industry. We'll move on to market potential. So this is DISC. So this is DISC. This is the heat map potential for the region, Penn-Del's region. You can see the growth in 2025, overall growth at 2.3%, led by the industrial sector at 3.7%, and then significant growth in 2026, led by both industrial and construction. And when we move on to construction starts, both forecasting services align on this. Relatively flat growth in 2027, and then we'll say 3% growth in 2028. And the data shown on the map represents 2025 potential. And as I've offered in previous presentations and done for some of you, we can provide county specific data, for your region where your business focuses. So please don't hesitate to ask us to do that. We'll move on to construction starts. This is the national picture for construction starts. You can see mid-single digit growth across the country after 9.4% this year. And keep in mind, from Dodge's perspective, that project construction starts in the year they begin, but starts lead overall put in place spending by 12 to 16 months. And we will move on to Penn-Del specifically. And you can see strong growth in construction starts for 2025 at over 26%, according to Dodge, led by residential, institutional, education specifically in the institutional space, public works, and commercial. That growth comes off a down year in 2024, but is 10% ahead of 2023. And ahead of the prior years. And as I mentioned, the 2025 growth in construction starts, it aligns to DISC's prediction of strong growth in 2026. If we remember that a construction start precedes put in place spending by 16 months. Any questions on this from anyone? This is just a further breakdown. If you look to the right, you can see 25 and 26, and it provides the individual product markets and their contribution to the overall growth in 25 and 26. It is a busy slide, as I have in my notes there, so I'll give everyone a chance to take a peek at that. Okay, last slide on the market forecast side of things. Usually finish up with construction starts by county. And you can see in 2025 that Philadelphia, Montgomery, Sussex County, Delaware always finds its way on there. And typically I get questions around that. And, the answer I get from Dodge is government construction projects. So I can certainly pinpoint which projects, if anyone's interested. I've had that asked in the past. In Luzerne County, which is up above Allentown, there's a very large hospital project that is driving that county towards the top in terms of starts. So any questions, comments on the data around market forecasting? Quiet group today. So moving on to service solutions, I figured I'd keep the service solution piece to 3 slides, and talk from a vendor partnering standpoint. Again, vendor partnering, it's not specific to Graybar. It's electrical distribution. And you can see my note there. And you can obviously read the statement and where it comes from. It comes from agile procurement and its role in adding value. But this is what we, Graybar, are looking to accomplish when we build service solutions with our customers to save labor costs. It speaks to understanding the project and being engaged in the project from the very beginning to the very end, and adjusting the services provided as the job moves through its various phases. Where we've worked with our customer base and where we've been successful. This is very much what it looks like. And it's sitting down and agreeing that we're going to work together, we're going to partner on a project, really from the start, from award on your side, and I would say that's probably where it's going to work regardless of who you work with. We obviously hope you give us an opportunity, but I really think that any kind of service solution offering on a project needs to be discussed, ironed out, and the vision, we need to work towards the vision, your vision of what's going to work on the job from the start of the project. This is a slide that just shows, menu of services, and this certainly isn't all of them, but our preference always is to discuss building solutions specific to a project, and starting off small to get used to working together. There's a thought process that if you're going to build a service solution with distribution, that it should be on a big job. I would argue the opposite. I would say that starting off on a smaller project to get used to each other, quote unquote, um, you know, is what allows for a bigger job to be successful. So, um, and you can see a variety of things on the screen, upper, middle, that's one of our job carts, and we do a fair amount of those across the region and certainly across the country, um, and those work very well on a lot of projects, especially where there's limited space. But you can see trailers as well. So a lot of different things. And again, like I mentioned in the previous slide, it's very much based on the project and what your vision would be of a service solution and what would save the most for you. So last slide here. I would mention our lighting fixture carts. It's something we do as a regular occurrence. This is just one of many types. There is significant savings that we've vetted out when utilizing this solution to service your lighting project. You can see my notes: improving efficiency, it reduces handling, lessens the risk of loss or damage, it improves safety, and eliminates waste. Right, a whole lot of things there that equal out to significant savings, which we can discuss individually. So that's my handful of minute discussion on service solutions, because I wanted to focus in on the market forecast, for the attendees here. But that is my last slide. And I think, Rob, I was right on 20 minutes, I believe, maybe just a minute over, which was the goal. So I'm happy to answer questions at this point. I think my contact information is readily available. If you have questions after, I'm happy to answer them. If you would like additional data, I'm happy to work with you on that as well.
All right. Thank you, Scott. And yeah, right on time. So I appreciate you for your presentation today. And I'll open it up. If there are any questions, please feel free to unmute yourself or use the chat feature. We'll leave that open for a minute here.
Hey, this is Joe from Liberty Integrated. I was kind of curious if I don't know if you guys could distribute this slide package to us. I'm kind of curious to take my time and read up more on that. So I thought it was a good presentation. It's pretty insightful. So thank you.
I appreciate that. Yeah, we'd send a copy to Rob right after the meeting, and he can put it in a place where you all can access it. So
awesome. Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Hey, Scott, this is Joe Zaleski with Battaglia Electric.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. I heard you mention about a large hospital project, and so we're going to be reaching out. Do we just reach out to our local salesperson to get this process started, to get some pricing and see what it costs to do the light fixtures, the on-site services, the job boxes, restocking, all that kind of stuff, automatic inventory?
Yeah, so you can certainly start with me. I'm happy to get the process started, or you can work with your local team, right?
Okay.
So whatever is easiest for you, but I'm happy to be a part of it. So
when it comes to those light fixtures, there could be a possibility there's 5,000, 8,000 light fixtures, okay. 7-story project, 400,000 square feet. How do you go about collaborating with getting that organized? You were just showing maybe 10 or 15 lights in there. How do we go about organizing that to know, like, are you guys storing the light fixtures in your warehouse and then we're giving you a delivery schedule, or we give you a week's notice when we need to have a certain amount of types there? Just kind of go over that briefly so I get an idea, or the team here gets an idea.
Yeah, so it's pretty straightforward. I mean, we obviously have to have a lot of collaboration, but we sit down, figure out a release schedule. They would come from our warehouse. We would discuss, what kind of cart, what kind of vehicle makes sense for the fixtures in question. I mean, the one I showed was the most basic that we do, 2x4s and 2x2s in, but we have a variety of other delivery mechanisms or carts, I'll say. So we make a decision on that, and then obviously we need detail on, what you want delivered and when, how you want it marked. You know, and we obviously coordinate at that point to make those deliveries marked that way on, in whatever kind of cart makes sense for the fixture, because obviously that cart would not work for, you know, other types of fixtures.
And that's your team that breaks them down and gets them into the carts?
It is, yes.
Okay. Okay. Well, I'm sure we'll be reaching out to you soon, if we haven't already reached out to you. All right.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah. Well, hopefully that answered your question, at least in a nutshell, anyway.
Oh yeah. I just nice to see what you guys can do for us. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, guys. Thanks. And I'll be sending out Scott's information after this presentation with a copy of the presentation, if that's all right with Scott. Seeing that we're at the end of our time here, I just want to thank everyone for hopping on again. And hope everybody has a safe and nice Memorial Day weekend. Thank you.
Thanks.